We'll call the meeting of the Bus Committee to order. Are there any public speakers?
Mr. Chairman, we have one public speaker, and that's Mr. Murray Bowden from Concerned Grandparents.
Thank you.
Turn it on. Oh. Morning. It's really a pleasure to be here this morning. Welcome to the new MTA. This is not the same MTA it was a year ago. Changes are very small, but they're here. I've seen it this morning. I get a couple of minutes here to grandstand, and I just want to remind the board members and others sitting around the room, you should be limited to the same grandstanding I do. There's a little excessive grandstanding. I'm sorry the whole board isn't here to hear this, but some of the board members use these few minutes to ask questions that belong in an email, not at a board meeting. I'm back to the same old stuff, Darrell. Why steering wheels are as big as they are, not the size of my Toyota Prius. Why the one thing that the bus driver needs to know, which is the speed of the bus, is not there as a digital number and everything else isn't there. It's a flat panel display anyhow, and what you put on that flat panel is what's decided. So to say that the bus companies don't offer it is a dereliction of somebody's duty. It is now incumbent on somebody to demand that bus drivers only see the speed of the bus. Of course, door opening and door closing, but you don't need to know how many miles the bus went since it was built. You don't need to know how warm the water temperature is or oil pressure. So how do I sit down with somebody, Garrell, and work this out with them? Is there anybody that you can arrange for me to have a meeting with? Can we have a conversation, or is it beyond the rules of this committee to actually engage? I said this at the last meeting. Cardinal Dolan went on Twitter yesterday. I mean, he's now twitting to his congregants, everybody else, and they have a conversation, and he answers them. I can't ask you a question, and you can't answer me?
Thank you, Murray.
Guess not.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from our April 23rd Bus Operations Committee? Approved. Second. Any questions, comments, changes? There being none, motion carries. Are there any changes to the committee's work plan?
No changes.
Okay. Darrell, let's talk about the relocations we have.
Okay. Good morning. Before we begin the regular portion of the meeting, I want to take this opportunity to advise the committee of a recent development with existing bus service at JFK as far as MTA buses and New York City Transit buses. We have recently been advised by the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey that we must permanently vacate the current Terminal 4 within the central terminal area of JFK, which is currently the southern terminus for the routes Q10, Q3, and the B15. The Q10 serves JFK Airport from Kew Gardens to the north, the Q3 from Jamaica to the east, and the B15 from Bed-Stuyvesant to the west. Port Authority staff have advised the MTA that this change is necessary to accommodate their plans for enlarging Terminal 4, and that the associated construction and traffic changes will commence later this month. We have worked with PA staff to find an alternative location that is operationally viable within the central terminal area and maintains proximity to the AirTran service. The location that has been offered is at Terminal 6, the location of the former JetBlue. This location is now unused, and the former frontage road will be made available for the exclusive use of New York City Transit and MTA buses. We have also received commitments from the Port Authority to provide appropriate waiting shelters for each of the 3 routes, and as well the ability to install MetroCard vending machines within the adjacent AirTran complex. To accommodate the PA's construction plans, we must expedite this revision to take effect on May 30th, We will advise our customers on buses at the Terminal 4 and on the MTA website. In addition, we are in the process of notifying local elected officials and community boards of this change. We will also follow up in June at the June Bus Operations Committee agenda with a service change staff summary as an information item to document this change retroactively. If there are no questions, I'd like to move on to John Kivelahan to give a report on operations.
Can I just
Sure.
ask a question? This change is actually a good change in one way, which is that the further along the route you make the terminal, several of these riders who would otherwise have had to wait in the bus to get to, for instance, a further terminal, don't have to. So the further along in the route that you make the terminal, the less. It's actually a quicker ride to the terminals for most riders, is it not?
It depends. Most of it's about 70 to 80% of the folks who take this
Are
work
workers.
at the airport, and if they generally work at Terminal 4, which is the large international terminal, so now they're going to go a little bit past
But
it
it's
and
still
have to
going to
come back.
stop at Terminal 4, is it not?
No,
It
it's
will
not.
It's going to bypass
Yes.
completely.
Right.
Bypass it.
But
and
that's because of
terminate in one.
construction at the airport. Or
Right. And the
something-
expansion of their
Permanent.
terminal.
Permanently.
It's a permanent.
I don't see it's a problem.
Okay.
Don't think- no.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, John, the operations report.
Okay, the performance highlights for the month of March 2012 and the past 12 months are on pages 11 and 12 of the committee book. For the month of March, combined bus MDBF was 4,830 miles, up 38% compared to March 2011 levels. These results reflect the positive benefits of the aggressive maintenance effort that was started in late 2011 to identify and repair defects before they are likely to fail in service, thereby reducing the number of road calls. This extra maintenance work was completed in February. It is also important to note that these gains were achieved as the current average fleet age continues to rise. The number of buses in the fleet that are 12 years or older increased by 18% compared to March 2011. One-third of the regional bus fleet is 12 years or older. AM and PM pullouts, as well as completed trips, were 99%, 99.4%, and 98.5% respectively for the month of March. Over the 12-month period, combined MDBF was 3,589 miles, an improvement of 3.4% when compared to the prior period. AM and PM pullouts, as well as completed trips, were 98.7, 99.3, and 98.2% respectively. Pullout statistics reflect slight improvements of 0.1 and 0.2% respectively when compared to the prior 12-month period. The trips completed improved by 0.4%. That completes the operations report. If there are no questions, I'd like to introduce Steve Vidal for the safety report.
Thank you. Our comments on March customer and employee safety performance refer to the results that are listed on page 13. Please note that in response to a request from several committee members, this report now reflects our efforts to provide more current safety data and eliminates the extra 1-month lag relative to the other operational and financial data regularly presented at the monthly committee. The 12-month rate for combined bus collisions per million miles across the two bus units is 5.9% lower than it was in the prior 12-month period, and collision injuries are also down by 2.5%. We remain confident that the positive performance we have been seeing in bus collisions will continue. However, as we have previously advised the committee, we continue to closely monitor the circumstances surrounding claims involving collision injuries. In March of this year, compared to March of 2011, there was a decrease in customer accident injuries by 8.9%. Customer accidents are also down 2.5%. While the 12-month average for both are higher than last year, both represent an improved position from the first 2 months of the year. Finally, the 12-month average rate for employee on-duty lost time accidents is 1% higher on a regional basis and 6.9% higher for the month. The monthly spike is a result of 9 additional employee injuries reported at New York City Transit. We are investigating each claim of injury to determine the root cause of the incident and will continue to closely monitor our performance in this area. This concludes the monthly safety report. Are there any questions? I'd like to introduce Tom Charles for Paratransit Report.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. Paratransit report is on page 15. For the month of March 2012, accessoride paratransit ridership was up 1.7% compared to March 2011 levels. 12-month ridership levels were up by 2.2% in accessoride. Over the 12-month period ending March 2012, there was a 2.6% decrease in the monthly average of accessoride requests for service. The favorable no-show trend continued in the month of March as accessoride passenger no-shows declined by 31.4%. I would also like to apprise the committee of a couple of significant cost containment initiatives that are being advanced in the paratransit area. First, a public hearing will be held on June 12th to obtain public comment on proposed tariff changes that are necessary to implement special MetroCard passes, which would be issued to paratransit-eligible registrants, offering free passage on New York City Transit subways and local buses as an incentive for these customers to choose New York City Transit fixed route service for some trips instead of the more expensive paratransit service. Secondly, we have extended the testing of the prepaid debit card to allow participation from paratransit-eligible registrants in Brooklyn, Queens, and the Bronx. Transportation service is provided by car services within the brokers' network that are equipped with electronic fare medium systems. The test also continues with yellow taxis in Manhattan. At present, we believe the test of the prepaid debit card to be successful and will use the knowledge and experience obtained to draft a scope of work and seek competitive bidding to subsequently award a contract for the provision and administration of a prepaid debit card for use on New York City Taxi and Limousine Commission regulated transportation service. This completes the paratransit report. Are there any questions?
Yes,
Tom, I think we probably discussed this last month, but in this issuance of free Metro cards to potential users or current users of the paratransit system, the way to prevent fraudulent use of those is, are they limited in any way, those cards? Is it going to be so many trips per day, for instance, or is it just a totally unlimited?
No, we're limiting the number of trips. We're developing a number on that. Generally, our pattern on accessoride is 3 to 4 trips a day, so it'll be in that range.
And will these will be picture cards, I assume?
Yes, they will have ID on them.
yes. I'd like to remind all the board members as well that we do have a public hearing on June 12th, so it'd be great if we could all be there. Thank you.
Good morning.
Tom Del Silver.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Good morning. The March fixed route report reflecting ridership trends is shown on page 14 of the committee book. For the month of March 2012, overall average weekday ridership increased by 0.7% when compared to March 2011. MTA bus average weekday ridership rose by 3.3% in March 2012, and New York City Transit bus also increased by 0.2% for the same period. Average weekend ridership in March was down at New York City Transit bus by 1.8%, but increased at MTA bus by 4.4%, resulting in an overall reduction of weekend ridership of 1%. Express bus ridership on weekdays increased at New York City Transit by 4% in March and rose 1.4% in MTA bus, resulting in an overall improvement of 2.8%. A brief look at preliminary data for April 2012 indicates that ridership levels rose when compared to the actual 2011 data for April. Average weekday ridership for MTA bus reflected a 3.3% increase over last year, while New York City Transit bus was 1.2% higher for this April as bus ridership levels continue to gradually improve. Moving on to the finance and expense report, as summarized on page 16. Year-to-date fare box revenues for March 2012 for fixed route bus services were lower than budget for New York City Transit by 0.3%, but better than budget in MTA bus by 3.1%. Overall, fixed route fare box revenues are $700,000 or 0.3% higher than budget through March 2012. On the expense side, bus operations March 2012 year-to-date non-reimbursable accrued expenses reflect a favorable variance of 2.5% or $16.8 million, as New York City Transit bus is below budget by $22.4 million and slightly offset by MTA bus, which is 5.5 million over budget. The performance against budget represents favorable non-labor expenses of $14.3 million, along with favorable labor expenses overall of $2.5 million. The non-labor underrun is primarily due to the use of lower-cost taxis and vouchers for paratransit service contracts. In addition, the timing of maintenance and other operating contracts as well as fuel payments contributed to the non-labor variance. The overall favorable labor variance results from the timing of fringe benefit expenses of $4 million under budget, partially offset by unfavorable salary and wage expenses of $1.5 million, mainly due to overtime expenses for the bus maintenance program. Now, all agencies this month are providing a first quarter update on non-reimbursable overtime performance to their operating committees. With regard to bus operations through March 2012 year-to-date, the combined non-reimbursable overtime for New York City Transit bus and MTA bus was $4.3 million, or 9.4% higher than the adopted budget of $45.6 million. This reflects both scheduled and unscheduled overtime. The main driver for the unfavorable year-to-date results was $3.7 million in spending to support the aggressive maintenance effort that began in late 2011 to improve fleet reliability and reverse the negative MDBF trend. This investment has improved MDBF over last year's performance after a more than a one-year decline. Bus operator vacancies and absentee coverage accounted for the remainder of the overtime overrun. 90% of the overrun in overtime occurred in the months of January and February. For the month of March, the overrun was only $400,000 of the $4.3 million. The maintenance effort in January and February clearly has shown a marked reduction in road calls and unscheduled maintenance work. And to alleviate bus operator staffing shortages, classes of newly hired bus operators have been scheduled every 2 weeks through May 21st, and we've hired almost 250 bus operators since the beginning of the year to address the vacancies. We'll continue to remain aggressive in filling vacancies, both in maintenance and transportation, and also looking at improving availability by implementing safety programs to reduce injuries on duty and addressing attendance-related issues. This concludes the finance and ridership reports.
Are there any questions? No questions?
Okay, we're moving on. There is but one non-competitive procurement this month, representing a total expenditure of $30 million for the committee's approval, beginning on page 37 of the book. This month's procurement, the staff summary of which is shown on page 43, is related to the purchase of an additional 54 over-the-road express buses for New York City Transit's fleet from Motor Coach Industries, or MCI. These express buses will replace buses that have exceeded their useful life of 12 years and have been in service since 1999. As a result of MCI's bankruptcy filing in 2008, New York City Transit and MCI have had extensive negotiations which resulted in a settlement agreement to resolve all outstanding contractual issues between the parties. Under the settlement agreement, MCI agrees to assume the contract inclusive of continuing warranties on 546 express buses that have been supplied under previous bus orders, and New York City Transit agrees to purchase the additional 54 express buses at a price of $553,658 per bus. While MCI emerged from bankruptcy in April 2009, the bankruptcy court retained jurisdiction for the purposes of several unresolved claims, including those of New York City Transit. Therefore, the settlement agreement, which includes this contract mod, is subject to the approval of the bankruptcy court. In the event approval is not granted by the bankruptcy court, a notice to proceed will not be issued, and this modification will be null and void. We have staff here to answer any questions regarding this procurement.
This must have been a major negotiation, not only involving a bankruptcy proceeding with claims, but how many buses to buy, the fact that it costs $550,000 plus, and that doesn't include the manuals, to buy a 45-foot express bus alone is mind-boggling. But it's even more mind-boggling to learn or to realize that we bought something like 1,200 of those previously, and MCI still went bankrupt. We have a rich history at the MTA of driving certain contractors into bankruptcy, but with prices like that, how did that happen? And will they be able to perform under this contract?
Steve?
The debt load that MCI was holding and carrying prior to the bankruptcy has been removed by the new owners, which infused a significant amount of money into the organization. To answer your question, yes, we do believe that they'll be able to perform. While they weren't obligated to honor warranties after the bankruptcy, MCI has in fact stood by us and actually held up their end of the bargain with regard to honoring warranties, even though they contractually didn't have to because of the bankruptcy. And we do feel confident that they'll be able to move forward.
It looks like what you did was to settle your old claims in exchange for a lower price. Is that basically the way it worked out?
We're getting a very good deal. The bus price is very competitive with what we paid Prevost, and MCI will be warranting and living up to their obligations in a contractual manner.
Are there any further questions? I'll move the question. Do we have a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Now I'll turn the floor over to Norm Silverman for service changes. Norm?
Good morning. There is one MTA bus route service change and 2 New York City Transit service changes included as information items for this month's agenda. The MTA bus change, as shown on page 43 of your book, will revise the westbound nonstop travel path of the B103 route in Brooklyn to provide more reliable service by using streets more conducive to nonstop bus operation. Specifically, the B103 will once again use 3rd Avenue to travel from the Prospect Expressway to Flatbush Avenue instead of using 7th Avenue and 5th Avenue where there is more pedestrian and parking activity. No bus stops would be discontinued on the current nonstop westbound path. However, one westbound stop on 3rd Avenue at State Street would be restored. The first of the 2 New York City Transit bus service changes, which were also included in the New York City Transit Committee agenda for discussion, is revision to the turnaround path of the Q48 at Main Street and Roosevelt Avenue in Flushing. In July 2010, New York City DOT implemented a series of measures to improve traffic flow and pedestrian safety in downtown Flushing, which required both MTA Bus and New York City Transit Bus to reroute a number of routes and relocate the bus stops in that area. These changes resulted in significantly less space for buses to stop and recover between trips throughout downtown Flushing. To address this congestion, New York City DOT has now provided additional layover space on the north curb of Roosevelt Avenue from Main Street to Prince Street, based on travel patterns and traffic restrictions that were implemented by NYC DOT in 2010. The Q48 route is best positioned to use the north curb of Roosevelt Avenue from Main Street to Prince Street. If you look on the map at the back of the staff summary, I think the picture here does tell an awful lot. In addition to reducing congestion on the south side of Roosevelt Avenue, this is expected to reduce travel time for westbound customers by several minutes, as the bus will no longer make 4 difficult and time-consuming turns in service. Lastly, the third service-related information item represents the implementation of a new select bus service component on Highland Boulevard in Staten Island. This service will be labeled S79 Select Bus Service. To save travel time, a combination of widened bus stop spacing, selected traffic control enhancement measures, as well as traffic signal priority elements will be implemented. In combination, this package of service improvements is expected to result in 20% faster travel time, up to 15 minutes for S79 customers. This service will replace the current S79 local service on Staten Island, but local service will continue to be provided along Richmond Avenue by the S59 and on Highland Boulevard by the S78. Are there any questions of any of the proposed changes? Peter and I can answer any of those as necessary.
Are there any questions from the members? Okay.
Special reports by Tom.
Special reports
Okay.
by Tom Del Silva. Tom?
The final section in this month's report, found on page 63, includes the quarterly EEO and diversity report for MTA Bus. This report includes data on workforce utilization, new hires, and complaints in the same format as the other operating agencies are submitting this month. The data for the New York City Transit Department of Buses has been incorporated into New York City Transit's committee quarterly report. We have bus, human resources, and civil rights staff here today to answer any questions committee members may have on any of the pages in the report.
Are there any questions from the committee or any members or anyone board members. Yes,
Right.
Mr. Furr.
Chairman, Tom, do you expect to get back to us at a later time with what steps you will be taking to address where you may not be meeting a goal?
Yeah, as the discussion at Transit just held, September, all the agencies are expected to provide narratives in terms of addressing areas of underutilization and other areas that action plans related to filling some of those gaps in this report. That report will also contain June 30th data, so it'll be updated to address the statistics based on that time frame.
Oh, you've answered a lot of questions for me. Thank you.
Okay.
One issue regarding this September, we are required by our own internal guidelines to do this quarterly. We don't have a meeting in August, so it naturally falls into September. Yes, Mark.
Tom, for your information, the Robin Hood dinner was held, I don't know whether you were there or not, a week ago today at the Javits Center. There were 4,000 people present. They raised $57 million. But the key presentation was about a Bronx resident who was unemployed and homeless, who was trained by various people assisted by the Robin Hood Foundation, who took the bus exam for a bus operator, who passed it and who started to work. And the whole bus company really was the feature of it and looked very good in there. So I don't know whether you heard about it, but if you were there, you'd all be very proud of this department.
Thank you for the remarks.
It was a great dinner. I'm surprised I didn't run into you. There were 5,000 other people there. Okay. All right. I'd like to turn the floor back over to Darrell for any final comments.
Just simply, are there any final questions? Okay, that concludes the agenda for today.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Move.
To move. Have a great month. Thank you all.
You were there?
Yeah.
See you.